Welcome into the LSU Sports Insider Podcast. Today is Thursday, September the 26th. I'm Zach Ewing, joined by Reed Darcey and Scott Rabalais, our LSU beat writer, one of them, and our LSU columnist. I guess the only one. You're the one and only.
I'm one of one.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. That's what we like to say here. We are going to preview LSU versus South Alabama today. It is, of course, LSU's final non-conference game, their final tune-up before a bye week, leading into the teeth of this SEC schedule, starting with Ole Miss in a couple of weeks, guys. So, when the schedule came out, I think it kind of looked like, it's just South Alabama, it's just a tune-up. But between LSU kind of struggling with overmatched opponents and not hitting on all cylinders yet, and combining that with what's to come, this is an important Saturday, I think, for them.
South Alabama looks scary, and then we can get into this later. It's sort of, this game is not going to be as easy as we sort of expected it to be before the season. As South Alabama, they have a top 10 scoring offense, and 2 weeks ago they scored 87 points in one game. That's the most any FBS team has scored in a game since 1991. They were playing Northwestern State when they did that. So they've beat up on some not so great teams. They haven't faced a team like LSU, but their offense has been really, really on fire the last couple of weeks, and they're going to bring that offense into Tiger Stadium.
Yeah, 135-24 their last two games. They went to Appalachian State on a Thursday last week and
on a short week.
Short week, and went up and down the field. I don't think Appalachian State is as good as they have been in years past, but still, they hung 48 points on them, and they've looked really good. So 67 points, a point a minute. Over the last two games, I guess whoever you're playing gets your attention. And as I put in, we do our predictions for the scores in Saturday's paper and put it online tomorrow on Friday. And I put in there, get your track shoes on, because LSU's gonna. I think we'd all expect that they're gonna have to score some points to make sure that they win this game. And if they do, they can win comfortably. But they're gonna have to be on their toes offensively.
And they were beating Northwestern State so bad that both coaches agreed to play the fourth quarter on a 6-minute running clock. So that's not something you see every
So it wasn't
day.
even a point a minute. It's
right.
more than that.
They scored 87 points in 51 minutes.
Which, by the way, you guys,
That's
you guys know I love the gambling world. Because of that, all bets were void from that game. It has to go 55 minutes for Las Vegas to recognize it as a game. And so when you shorten the fourth quarter like that, it doesn't matter if you had South Alabama, I don't know what the line was, let's say it was minus 48, they won by 77, doesn't cash, it's not an official game. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, kind of a bummer for those folks. Of course, there may be people who were saved by that too. So, but speaking of gambling, the over-under in this game, by the way, is 65.5. So odds makers expect a track meet as well. We're going to get into the matchup in every which ways we can. Want to let you know that the LSU Sports Insider is brought to you by Waste Pro. Tiger fans, if you're planning a tailgate or event, keep your guests comfortable with portable toilets from Waste Pro. Call 225-744-6400 and mention the LSU Sports Insider for a special offer. And with that said, we're going to take a break. We'll be back in 60 seconds to break this one down.
Fellas, it's clear why Caesars brought us together. This is the ultimate quarterback roundtable.
I think I know why we're here.
What? Quarterback, high school, Oklahoma? I thought that was a musical.
Garth, I think you're here because when people use Caesars Sportsbook, they earn with Caesars rewards. Things like celebrity chef dining, Vegas vacations, even tickets to your show.
This app is over the top. There's the idea.
Bet with Caesars Sportsbook. Earn Caesars rewards and see your favorite quarterback, Garth Brooks, in concert.
Hey, you can't throw like that.
You know how far I've gone, now I'm home again. I'm feeling more alive these days than I've ever been.
At the Baton Rouge Clinic, our sole focus is to provide exceptional health care for your entire family so that you can get back to doing what you love most. We are caring for generations.
You gave me love.
All right, back on the LSU Sports Insider Podcast, want to let you know that we are brought to you by the Baton Rouge Clinic, your trusted healthcare provider in the heart of Baton Rouge. Whether you're in need of primary care, specialist services, or urgent care, the Baton Rouge Clinic has you covered with a team of dedicated and experienced professionals. Visit BatonRougeClinic.com to learn more or to schedule your appointment today.
If you need a pediatrician, I can recommend one.
At the Baton Rouge Clinic?
Yes.
Last name of
Well, it used to be Rabalais.
Maiden name of Rabalais? Yes.
It's my daughter is a pediatrician.
Yeah, all right.
Nuss.
The Baton Rouge Clinic, caring for generations. Okay, let's dig into this. LSU-South Alabama, 6:45, Saturday night in Tiger Stadium. Mentioned the over-under was 65.5. LSU's a 22-point favorite, so about the same as UCLA. Obviously not the name opponent that UCLA was, but as you guys mentioned before the break, like LSU, number one, I don't think they're in a position to not take anybody seriously. But this team especially should have their attention, Reed.
Yes, absolutely. So, like I mentioned earlier, South Alabama top 10 in scoring offense. They're 9th in scoring offense. So when you look at the numbers, it's like how have they gotten that high in the ranks of scoring offense? So they're averaging 6.9 yards per carry. That's one of the 3 best averages in the country. They're one of 13 teams with at least 50 passing plays that have gone for over 10 yards. They're tied for 11th in yards per play. And in the red zone, they've scored on 23 of their 24 trips to the red zone. They're one of 22 teams with at least a 95% conversion rate. And of those 24 trips to the red zone, they've scored 18 touchdowns. So, like, the offense, like I said earlier, it hasn't been tested by a power conference defense yet, but it's just rolling over, its last couple opponents. And I think when you look at a team like LSU that hasn't played defense to its standard, that still has a couple things to clean up on the defensive side of the ball, if LSU doesn't play nice, sound, fundamentally, sound defense, then South Alabama is a type of team that, because they're so hot, they can linger into this game. They can linger into the third quarter. They can make it a close game going into the fourth quarter. And I know that LSU fans won't exactly be happy about that, just like they haven't been happy about it against Nicholls State and against UCLA, 2 games that really were a little bit closer than I think most LSU fans wanted them to be.
It's worth mentioning, though, as you said, they haven't played a defense, the talent level of LSU. They played North Texas. They played Ohio, they played Northwestern State, and they played an Appalachian State team that is not what Appy State has been. So this will be by far the best test for South Alabama, too. But again, they're putting up the numbers, and whoever they're doing it against, you have to respect it and have to say this is an unexpected challenge for LSU, given the level of the opponent. But maybe that's good for LSU. Maybe that'll keep make them focus a little more and try to put together, which they have not done, that full game that they need to show before they play Ole Miss in 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's really what this is. I mean, South Alabama, like they're challenging, and we're building them up a little bit. They did lose to North Texas and Ohio, so we don't expect LSU to be in a fourth quarter dogfight necessarily. I think a lot of fans would be outraged, as you said, Reed, if that was the case, and very worried about what the SEC season would hold. But that's not to say that this team can't challenge them in ways. We saw their rushing defense look very good against UCLA. And South Alabama is obviously going to challenge that. You mentioned they're 3rd in the country, 6.9 yards per carry.
Yes.
The 2 teams in front of them are Boise State, who has Ashton Jaunty, who's probably going to be the first running back taken in the NFL draft, and then Ohio State, who is not only Ohio State, but they also haven't played anybody of note yet, and so they're really just running down teams' throats. That's what South Alabama has done so far to their opponents. So we'll see.
And they can also create explosive plays on offense, right? They're one of the 15, I guess, teams in terms of total explosive plays, runs, and passes. They're up there as well, and Ole Miss is up there too. So if the thing that's been holding back this LSU defense from really accomplishing what it can has been surrendering these explosive plays, I think Wilson Alexander had a good story earlier in the week. He pointed out how South Alabama and Ole Miss, their offenses, both of them have done a great job of creating those explosive plays. So for an LSU defense that struggled to stop them, they're going to get a couple chances to really prove that they can against the teams who are good at creating those plays.
Yep. So let's start our breakdown. We're going to get in depth here on both sides of the ball. We're going to start with the injury report. Today's injury report is brought to you by the Baton Rouge Clinic. So let's see. We did a whole Monday pod on this. Koki Riley and I did, but you guys may want to chime in. It's life without Harold Perkins, and that's really the injury report here. Is that LSU for the first time in 3 seasons doesn't have. Well, he's number 7 now. Number 7 in the middle of the defense, kind of patrolling everything and soaking up a whole lot of attention.
Yeah, I mean, he's not replaceable. I don't think he's played to a preseason All-America level in the 3 games and change that he played. But nonetheless, he's not someone that you can say, well, we have another one like that, in the background. So more responsibility falls on Greg Penn, more falls on Whit Weeks, more falls on West Weeks, his brother, to come in and play more. Then they have a freshman who hasn't played yet, who they figure is going to have to now step in and be that fourth linebacker to spell people when they need to do that. So is it going to affect how LSU lines up? They get the star position and they get these different alignments. Brian Kelly said this. He thinks they have enough linebackers to still be able to use their Buffalo package, being a 4-3, but it's they can't afford too many more. And this is the third major injury. They did such a good job in preseason, right? Avoiding injuries and guys getting hurt. Other than Chris Hilton, who has yet to see the field, but Brian Kelly said he thinks he'll play this week. Finally. But three major injuries with John Emery going down in practice, and then Jacoby and Gildery, a defensive tackle, and Harold Perkins. So you've lost arguably your two best defensive players right up the middle. Although other guys have played really great, Braden Swinson and Parrish Shand and some of these other guys along the defensive front. So, but it's a blow. I mean, you can't. As I said, I don't think Perkins was still playing up to the level that we saw him play in 2022. But it's still he's still irreplaceable, and they're gonna have to try to figure it out with lesser and fewer guys.
And LSU has two options now for its base defense, like you mentioned earlier. They could use the 4-3 front that they started using for the South Carolina game. That's with three linebackers on the field at once. They did that. They switched to that because they were trying to contain South Carolina's running game, with their quarterback and the running back, both big, bulky, bruising runners. They really needed more size inside to contain that rushing attack. And so they could go to that. That would mean more snaps for West Weeks, the older brother of Whit Weeks. He would be a starter in that base defense. Or they could go back to what they started the year with, which is more like a 4-2-5 when you got two linebackers. And that would be Greg Penn and Whit Weeks, with Major Burns coming down from the safety spot to more of the star position, which is a hybrid, safety kind of linebacker type role. So they've got two options. We'll see what they go with against South Alabama on Saturday. I tend to think that because South Alabama can run the ball so well, you probably stick with that Buffalo package, the 4-3. But we'll see. LSU's got to figure out what it wants to look like before it gets into the meat of the SEC schedule.
Do you think Burns is better as a kind of a front seven guy than a guy in coverage?
He's physical. He likes going down and blitzing and being around in the box. I think that's kind of his nature as a player. So I think that role, that star role that LSU created for him, I think it suits him pretty well and allows you to give a couple more safeties, some looks at the back of your defense, like Jordan Allen, a young guy, or Sage Ryan, a veteran, or Deshaun Spears, a freshman who they really like and want to get involved in the defense.
So that's a problem. All is not lost for LSU's defense, no. but it is a problem to overcome. But they do have some options, as Reed so capably pointed out.
Yeah. Okay. So more on LSU's defense and how they'll deal with South Alabama's rushing attack here in a minute. We're going to start with LSU on offense when the Tigers have the ball. And you mentioned him, Chris Hilton, expected to be back this week. He's been practicing this week. Brian Kelly said, this is the last week we don't actually get an injury report because it's the last non-SEC game. But we think Chris Hilton will play. So let's start there with our breakdown of LSU's offense against South Alabama's defense, because if this game goes the way we think it's going to go, LSU is going to need to score some points to comfortably win this game. Probably 40+ if you're talking about being comfortable. Chris Hilton can spread a defense, we think. He hasn't been on the field yet this year. But how does he change the dynamic of LSU's offense?
He's the fastest guy on the team, maybe. He can really stretch the field, run vertical routes, go routes, deep routes. He can really do it all. In preseason camp, he really showed, I think, a more refined route tree. He was getting open underneath, over the middle. He was getting open for Garrett Nussmeier in those areas of the field. But his main strength is that he's a vertical threat in offense who can really use his speed to get behind the defense. And that's really an element that LSU hasn't had as part of its offense so far this year. It's got lots of good receivers, but it doesn't really have a true burner who can really test and stretch a defense with his legs. So it'll be interesting to see how many snaps he plays this week. We kind of expected him to play last week, but Brian Kelly said LSU held him out kind of at the last minute, just because I guess they didn't like how his ankle kind of responded in pregame warmups, and they wanted to play it safe. So we should see him this week finally after he suffered a bone bruise in preseason camp. And I think LSU will probably dial up a few deep shot, passing plays to really test out his speed and get him more comfortable in the offense, because they're going to need that element of that offense if they want to hang with Ole Miss and Alabama and teams like that.
They need him this week. You need to show that. You need to have that on film for these teams to have to look at. You want to account for him, and even if they don't complete a long bomb to him, certainly. But South Alabama and future opponents would have to account for him, because Nussmeier can certainly get the ball out there with his arm, and then that opens up things over the middle more for a Mason Taylor or for a Kyron Lacey or something like that. Teams are maybe they're able to they've been, because LSU, as you said, has not really gone deep a lot. It's been a lot of intermediate and short stuff, and letting the receivers then make the yards after the catch. This makes you go, oh, we gotta send somebody else to account for this Hilton guy, and then that opens up things otherwise. So I think it's definitely an element to the LSU offense. I'd give them a good solid B, so far. I think that even with the running game, the passing game's been so good, and Nussmeier's been excellent, I think, over the course of the season. But this really could help them hit a different gear if he can play effectively.
No, 100%. And I think that the fact that Nussmeier's been so good without that deep threat and without any real running game to speak of, I think really highlights how well he's played. But about that running game, like 2 weeks ago against South Carolina, we saw Caden Durham kind of bust out and look like he might be the answer to LSU's running woes. And then it was like a 2 steps forward, 1 step back situation against UCLA. So where do you guys see LSU's running game, and what would you like to see from it Saturday?
I want to see them give more touches to Caden Durham, because he didn't get very many in the first half against UCLA, and the one he did, he scored a touchdown. I think it was a pass, actually. He was coming over shallow over the middle, and he catches the ball. What's he do? He breaks a tackle and scores a touchdown. So that's what he does. He breaks tackles. He creates his own yards. He adds yards after contact. That's his best trait as a runner. And Brian Kelly has said that they've been looking for a running back who can create his own yards like that. So I want to see a little bit more of Caden Durham, early, so we can get kind of in a rhythm and get more comfortable as the game goes on. And then I want to see LSU run the ball efficiently, like not get 1-2 yards. You want to see them get 4-yard chunks, 5-yard chunks, and then maybe break off a couple longer runs. So I think having Chris Hilton back helps the run game a lot, because Brian Kelly, the last few weeks, he's been saying this over and over again. He's saying teams have been giving us a lot of heavy boxes. They've had an extra guy into the box to stop the run. So if you have Chris Hilton in the equation, a guy who can burn defenses deep, then maybe you start to see some lighter boxes, and you allow LSU to run the ball more often into those lighter boxes and have some more success. So that's the other side of the equation of what Chris Hilton gives you when he comes back.
It's up to the viewer or the LSU fan to buy what LSU is selling. And Brian Kelly will say that they regard some of these short passes near the line of scrimmage as kind of like running plays. And this is what we saw, that pass in the left flat for the touchdown to Durham, that he just took off. He was so fast, he just ran past the whole UCLA defense. And you can say, well, that's UCLA's defense, but they're in the Big Ten. I mean, they're a Power 4 team. But it's to Reed's point, it's getting consistently, getting that push, getting those tough yards when you're going to have to get them against some of these better teams that are still to come on your schedule, specifically Ole Miss and Alabama and Oklahoma, and I guess we could throw Texas A&M in there. They are ranked in the top 25, and that's a game on the road. So they've got to do a better job of that and be a little more creative. And some of this is on the offensive line. It's a lot of things. Some of this on the offensive line, some's on the running backs, some's on Joe Sloan as a play caller who has. Brian Kelly has alluded to this. He's got to kind of grow as a play caller and be a little more, imaginative and inventive in these short yardage situations, which they were at the end of the South Carolina game. They sent the receiver in motion from right to left and kind of drew the South Carolina defense just slightly, and then they run off tackle with Josh Williams for the game-winning touchdown. So there is some growth there. I think they all have to grow, but being able to consistently get those tough yards and get a push. look, you should be able to do that. You're LSU. You should be able to do that against the South Alabama.
You want to see LSU bully them around a little bit. And
Right,
that's what we haven't seen yet,
Right.
even against some overmatched opponents. And if you can't bully South Alabama, no disrespect to them, but they're still a Sun Belt team. If you can't do that, what do you expect to do, as you say, against Alabama or Texas A&M, which has a great defense, Oklahoma, some of these other teams?
They couldn't really do it to Nichols, and they couldn't really do it to UCLA, so we'll see if they can do it to South Alabama.
Yeah. All right, we're going to flip things around. First, we're going to do our Star Player. Today's Star Player segment is proudly sponsored by Waste Pro. Ensure your tailgate or event is a hit with clean and convenient portable toilets from Waste Pro. Rent yours today. And this is, we usually on Thursdays will highlight the star from the opposing team, and we could do a whole segment on Fluff Bothwell because his name is spectacular and his game is spectacular. I mean, he's a freshman, okay? He's in-state guy, he's from Alabama, and I don't think anybody knew. I'm not even sure the South Alabama coaches knew what they had, because you can see his usage go up. He was only getting half a dozen touches in their opener, and then all of a sudden now he's getting more like 15 to 20 touches a game. Guy's averaging 9.7 yards a carry, scored 6 touchdowns in 4 games. I think 5 of them are in the last 2 games. And he's like, the guy's like a star. If he played for an SEC team, he'd be a star.
Yeah, he's been awesome, and it was fun kind of discovering him. I'm like, wait, this guy's got a funny name. Oh wait, he's actually good. He's actually having a great year. So yeah, you're gonna hear his name a lot this weekend in Tiger Stadium, and he might frustrate you a little bit if you're an LSU fan. But yeah, he's a great runner. He does a lot of his work after contact. I believe, according to Pro Football Focus, I believe he has 17 missed tackles, 17 broken tackles that he's forced. And after contact, I think he's averaging maybe 4.8 yards. That's after contact.
Yeah, 5'10", 220. Think bowling ball.
Right.
Like you got to tackle this guy a lot.
Yeah, so he's tough to bring down. He's really good in open field, and he presents big problems for the LSU defense because he is the foundation of their offense, and he's the reason why it's been so good.
How many yards per carry?
9.7.
9.7. Wow. That's impressive. I would imagine if they can get him on the ground, Braden Swinson, if Braden Swinson can plant him in the turf, he might have something to say about that name. Just getting up the crowd. So that's going to be very interesting. But hey, look, this has been LSU. Like they said, that's one thing they kind of cleaned up against UCLA. They did a good job against their running game. They got beat by some long passes, and Brian Kelly said, I can live with that. If the guy's got good coverage and he's doing everything right, and the other team completes a pass, that's going to happen. But he said these long runs, they can't have that. They just can't have that. And so this is the test of that. Are they really getting better at this? They look better against UCLA, especially in the second half against the run, but they've got to do it against a team that has shown some propensity. And if Nicholls State could do it against LSU, we're going to see are they better a couple of weeks later, 2 or 3 weeks later, against the run and against a guy like a Guggenheim. I've been saying that LSU got Guggenheimed by like Rocket Sanders in the South Carolina game. So is that going to be replaced by LSU got fluffed?
Can't you just see? And I hate to like move a guy into the transfer portal before he's there, but like there's some mattress NIL deals or pillow NIL deals waiting for the guy at Auburn or Ole Miss or one of these places.
Don't let the name fool you. The kid can play. The kid can run hard.
I don't know. We'll see what happens. But I couldn't even find an action shot of him to use for this graphic you see up there. I had to use
his mystery.
Yeah, his South Alabama profile shot. So I guess we'll see what he's all made of, and we'll see what the LSU defense is made of. Kind of expanding on that, and it's not just fluff. If we talk about when South Alabama has the ball, as a team, as we mentioned at the top, they average 6.9 yards per carry. They will pass the ball. This is not a total one-dimensional offense. I think they have 96 first downs. LSU has 98, so they're right on par with LSU. They're both top 12 in the country. Going to be a challenge for LSU.
Their quarterback, Chio Lopez, he's been really good against the blitz. I don't have his exact numbers on hand, but according to Pro Football Focus, he's been super efficient against the blitz. But when he's faced pressure, his numbers start to look worse, right? He hasn't had the same kind of success when he's been under duress than he has when teams have just sent pressure, if that makes sense. So when you blitz this guy, I think it's really imperative for that blitz to get home and collapse the pocket, or else he's shown an ability to really carve you up if the blitz doesn't get home. So I'd pick that out as one of the keys to the game for LSU, is really making sure that the blitzes get home, because we know that LSU wants to blitz. We know that they'll blitz a lot, but we need to see if they can actually create the pressure that they want to create, because Lopez has shown that he can carve you up, and he's had a good season.
Can Gio Paez get to Gio Lopez? That's a key to this game.
Yeah.
I think LSU's the one sign of hope for the LSU defense is they've gotten more pressure with the front four.
Absolutely.
And they like to blitz under Blake Baker, but they're not doing it every down. And this, if they can just get on this guy with the front four, and like you said, that might be kind of the way to pick his lock, shall we say, then that might be a good sign for LSU. Braden Swinson's been tremendous. 5 sacks in the last 2 games, and Parashand has been tremendous. They've got a lot of sacks, and they don't give up many, conversely. But this might be a good sign for LSU in regards to handling that aspect of their offense.
Savion Jones, too. He's had a really good year off the edge.
I meant Savion Jones. I think Savion's got 4 sacks.
Yes,
yeah, I think he's got. But they've all been good, and of course Swinson is maybe emerged as the star of the defense so far. I would think this been the case.
Yeah. And without Perkins, obviously they need somebody to step into that spotlight. So maybe he's the guy. Well, you guys gave kind of a tease to your keys of the game, but we're going to come back and do our official keys to the game segment after this, and then we'll do sports betting around the SEC and finish up with our predictions here on the LSU Sports Insider podcast. Coming back right after this break.
Since 1988, Classic Industrial Services, Inc. has led the industry in specialty contracting. From thermal insulation to scaffolding, coatings, and beyond, we cover it all. Every minute matters in our commitment to quality and safety. We're here to serve with roofing, siding, heat trace, and refractory services. Visit classicindustrial.com for more information.
Welcome back to the LSU Sports Insider podcast, talking LSU versus South Alabama, 6:45 Saturday night in Tiger Stadium on SEC Network on your television. Guys, Keys to the Game is proudly sponsored by Associated Grocers. Join our team and support the success of local independent retail grocers. Apply today for available positions at Associated Grocers. All right, you mentioned them, Reed, at least one of your keys to the game before. This is the final tune-up for Ole Miss. You want to see some of those blitz packages get home, some of the pressure from the front four continue. What else you got as far as a key to the game?
The main one is limiting explosive plays. I think the LSU defense has done a much better job of creating pressure than it did last year. It's done a much better job of forcing and taking turnovers than it did last year, but it's still surrendering explosive plays about as often as it did last year, and that's a problem when you go against Ole Miss and Alabama, because they have their offenses will absolutely take advantage of that. A lot of it's been in the run game, like we mentioned. We mentioned Colin Guggenheim on every podcast. I feel like we need like we need the bell, the bell that y'all have on the Saints show for Matt Paris. So he broke off that run, and then South Carolina did it. They broke off a week later. UCLA, though, to give LSU credit, they didn't really give up too many explosive runs. The explosive plays they gave up were in the passing game. So the only thing that's really preventing this LSU defense from being a really passable unit that can get you, close in some of these SEC games has been its inability to stop giving up explosive plays. And so you want to see LSU continue to make progress in that regard because they're running out of chances to have large margins of error in these kinds of games to where, a couple of those big plays won't hurt you as much as it would against Ole Miss.
Rab, anything to add, a key to the game?
I think just staying healthy. As I said, they've been hit by this rash of injuries to key players lately, and
3 weeks in a row, right, where they've lost a player for the season.
Yeah, Emory, as I said, was a practice injury, but yes, that is the case. Just stay healthy, and that starts with Garrett Nussmeier. They've done a very good job of keeping him clean in the pocket. Most of the season, he got knocked around a couple of times against South Carolina, but by the most part, and look, he's been really good. I mean, overall, he's had to shoulder a lot of the burden for this offense, and with his arm, he can't or won't do it certainly as much with his feet as Jaden Daniels did. But keep him healthy. Try to see if you can get. Can they get enough of a lead on this dangerous offensive team to put in a Ricky Collins, to sub in some players, to keep everybody, ideally you'd like to only play Nussmeier 3 quarters and then put him in bubble wrap until the Ole Miss game, but that is a key. Try to get through this game with a minimum of any kind of serious setbacks so you can try to be at your best for what will be your best test of the year against Ole Miss.
There's certain things that could be a key to any football game, and turnovers. And I feel like we mentioned this one every week, but you need to get out to a lead against this team, because this is South Alabama. We talked about 6.9 yards per carry. There's certainly a run to set up the pass team. They do not want to be in a situation where they're down 2 or 3 scores and throwing the ball and facing that LSU blitz. On the flip side, if LSU turns the ball over a couple times early and find themselves down 10-0 or something, you could be in a real dogfight, because South Alabama, then what are they going to do? They're going to run the ball 40 times at you. So, you want to be careful to make sure you put your foot down early and show kind of who's the boss.
It's kind of like Nichols. Nichols did a great job of controlling the pace of the game in that first half. With their run game, their run game was so good, it sort of gave them 4 or 5 yards at a time, and they were able to control the clock like that. And the result of that was that you had a tie game, or at least a close game, like at the start of the third quarter, right? LSU was supposed to be up at least 3 scores by then, and sort of similar script followed in the UCLA game. The game was tied at halftime. LSU pulled away in the second half after playing a good half of football. But I think Brian Kelly mentioned this a couple times this week. He wants to see LSU play 4 quarters. Of course, you want to see LSU play 4 quarters, but they haven't played a full, complete 4-quarter game yet. And you want to see them just go up quickly, get a quick 21-point lead against a team like this, and then ride that into a blowout win, an easy win. That's what you want it to look like if you want to compete for college football playoff spot. That's what those teams are supposed to do against this kind of competition.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ray.
Maybe this is a minor point, but Kelly has certainly been scrutinized for winning the toss and taking the ball to start the game, and he says, I don't care what the analytics say, it's important to score first. Well, maybe it is a time to score first. If they win the toss, maybe this is one time they definitely should take the ball first and try to go down there and get that 7-0 lead, because you don't want to ping pong with them and be on the catch up side where you have to catch up to them every time.
Yeah, I do think the analytics on that may change when you're a powerful offensive team with a bad defense, because you don't want to kick off if you think you're going to give up a touchdown right away, or there's a risk of that. So we'll see. Tiger Fans Associated Grocers is hiring. Join a team committed to the success of independent retail grocers. Apply today at Associated Grocers and be part of something great. We're going to have our predictions at the end of the show, see what we think will actually happen out there at Tiger Stadium on Saturday night. But first, let's go around the SEC with Classic Industrial Services, because at Classic Industrial Services, every minute matters. And in the SEC, it just means more. The big game in the SEC this week, Scott, Georgia at Alabama. Alabama, a home underdog for the first time since, I think, Nick Saban's first year, 2007.
Wow.
So maybe it was his second year. Maybe it was 2008. But, obviously this is the marquee matchup, the first of a few throughout the SEC season.
Well, this is, with Texas and Oklahoma joining the league, and we saw a big game last week with Oklahoma and Tennessee. But this is old school SEC big-time matchup. Two teams really ranked in the top 5, definitely ranked in the top 5, and rematch of last year's SEC championship game won by Alabama, which put them in the playoff and kept Georgia out of the playoff, which they took out their frustrations on Florida State in the Orange Bowl. This is a game, by the way, with Hurricane Helene threatening the Gulf Coast. Because it's in Tuscaloosa, this is a game that shouldn't have any problems with the weather. If they were playing in Athens, it might be a problem. But they're playing in Tuscaloosa, and sorry to say, a lot of LSU fans and South Alabama fans will be watching their teams play, but probably everyone else in the country will be watching this game, which kicks off almost the same time on Saturday night. It's a big test. I thought. I'm not surprised Alabama is a slight home underdog, but Georgia's struggle at Kentucky 2 weeks ago really gives me pause a little bit about them. I've said all along they play such a tough schedule. They go to Alabama, they go to Ole Miss, they go to Texas. They're not going undefeated. But this is one of those games that's very losable for them. They don't seem to have, for all that they don't seem to have that extra offensive game-breaking threat, or they haven't really displayed it so far. So I think Alabama will slowly over time kind of lose a little something off of what they've been under Nick Saban, but maybe not yet. Maybe this is the game where they get it done. I would like Alabama in this game, I think.
Right. I think big picture wise, what makes it such a good game is the coaching matchup. I think so. When you look at Kirby Smart and you look at all the Saban assistants who've gone on to be head coaches, elsewhere around the country, Kirby's really the only guy who's built a program into something that can rival and beat an Alabama and the Alabama powerhouse that Nick Saban built over all those years there. So I think it's just fascinating from the perspective of that. So now that Saban's gone, Kirby's like the guy now, right? He's the top coach in the SEC. No question. He's the top coach in the SEC. He has the top program in the SEC. He's won,
he's the only
SEC
coach who's won a national championship, correct? Now that Jimbo Fisher's also gone.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's correct.
But he's only beaten Alabama one time.
Exactly.
And this time as head coach of Georgia.
So now that's
national championship in Indy.
Now that Saban's gone, it's his time to take his program and really take it to that next level and sustain that level of success that Nick Saban did. And this is the first big test post Nick Saban. So I think it's fascinating on that front.
And it takes on this added dimension. This is a game that is very important, and obviously you want to see it, and it's a fascinating matchup and all that. But it's not curtains for the team that loses. With this expanded college football playoff, you certainly, no matter who wins or loses, you expect the whoever wins. Obviously, it's great for them, but the loser, you still expect them to be in the college football playoff. So it takes on a little different dynamic than what it might have a year ago.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Every other team in the SEC besides LSU is either on their bye week or they're playing a conference game, by the way. The other games are Kentucky at Ole Miss, Oklahoma at Auburn, Arkansas facing Texas A&M. That game is in Arlington, and then Mississippi State at Texas. 37.5
point spread.
That's going to be ugly, that one.
Don't let the children watch that one. We talked about this yesterday. The Auburn Oklahoma game could be threatened by bad weather. The storm's supposed to go pretty much up the Alabama Georgia border.
Supposed to be north of there by Saturday, but with flooding and those sorts of things.
Will that be impacted?
You might have power outages.
Yeah, right. First responders get called. I don't know.
Around here, we all know the deal, right? I mean, we are certainly praying for those people.
That game could be impacted as compared to as I said, the Alabama Georgia game, which should not be. But Arkansas and Texas A&M, is this the last time they're going to play? At
that I don't
AT&T?
know. Yeah,
I know they want to get. I think the teams want to bring that to an end and bring the game back to campus.
I think it is the last time, but I'm not 100% sure.
They kind of tried to make it. Hey, this is our version of the State Fair game, the Texas-Oklahoma game. I don't think it's quite been the same thing.
Hasn't? No. Today's episode of LSU Insider is brought to you by Classic Industrial Services, proudly serving Louisiana and the entire United States with high-quality scaffolding, erection, and rental services, metal siding and roofing, steam and electric tracing systems, and much more. Classic Industrial is your go-to for quality and safety. They're not just about business. They're a proud community partner supporting local initiatives and helping build a stronger Baton Rouge. Because at Classic Industrial Services, every minute matters. Speaking of Georgia, Alabama, we're going to go to our sports betting segment now with Thomas Casale. And that is brought to you by the Queen of Baton Rouge. Experience the thrill of game day at 1717 Kitchen and Cocktails, your premier destination for elevated sports entertainment. Thomas told us he didn't really like either side in the LSU-South Alabama game on Monday, so we'll see what he thinks about Georgia -2 at Alabama.
Hello, everyone. Well, the big game in the SEC this week is Georgia at Alabama. Interesting line movement here. The look-ahead line in this game was Georgia minus 4.5. It is now down to Georgia minus 2 at DraftKings. Listen, I think this is going to be a good game. And if you got the early number on Alabama, I don't think that's a bad play. But at minus 2, I like Georgia on the short line or even the money line here. The Bulldogs have won 16 straight games on the road. Both teams had a week off to prepare, but I think we see a different Georgia team than we saw against Kentucky. So I like them on the short number. And listen, if you're an LSU fan, both these teams have tough schedules moving forward. So this is a big game in terms of the college football playoff. But if you're an LSU fan, I'd be rooting for Georgia because Alabama comes to LSU later in the season, and LSU could really put Alabama on the ropes for the college football playoffs. So I think Tigers fans get their wish. I like Georgia to cover the short number on the road.
That's great.
Tiger fans, you can catch all the sports action at the Queen Casino's DraftKings Sportsbook Bar and 1717 Kitchen and Cocktails. With top-notch screens and live betting, it's the ultimate spot to watch your favorite teams and enjoy a cold brew or signature cocktail. The Queen Casino is the only land-based casino in Baton Rouge and your go-to for game day or any day. Visit today and elevate your sports watching experience. And with that, guys, it's time for us to get into LSU-South Alabama predictions. I will preface it with this note, lest anyone think this is going to be a walkover. September 30th, 2017, and I remember the date because it was the date I moved to Baton Rouge, LSU loses to Troy. Shocking result, the beginning of the end for the Les Miles there. Maybe not even the beginning of the end. Maybe the middle of the end.
That was Ogeron.
Yeah. No, that was Ogeron. Yeah, okay. That was before. Yeah, okay. So I obviously wasn't in town yet. But it can happen. Things can go badly no matter how well you think they're going to go or how much you're overmatched the team. So is there a chance for an upset, Reed, and what's your pick?
I think there's a slim chance for an upset. Like, we've been talking about South Alabama this whole time, and we've been saying just how good their offense is. I didn't mean to say that they're going to upset LSU, right? I think LSU still does enough to win. So, Zach, you think the spread's at what, 22?
22 is the spread.
So I think South Alabama does enough to cover that spread, and the over-under's 65.5. Mm-hmm. So I'll go over on that as well. And so my final score, I think I said 40-26. I think it hits the over, and then South Alabama covers it. I think 22 is a little too large for my liking, given the way South Alabama's offense can score. So I think we see something similar to what we've seen against Nicholls and UCLA, where it's kind of close early on, but LSU pulls away late.
Okay, 40-26. Scott, what you got?
I have LSU 48, South Alabama 23. Though it's not exactly my score. I said, okay. I told my brother Jeff, his son Brady, and my son Nicholas, you guys give me your scores, and I'm going to average them up, and this is what my score will be. I will go with that in the paper. So that's what they gave me, and I didn't find it too out of whack that I wouldn't think it's okay. So does LSU covers? Yes. Does the over hit? Yes. So I think LSU pulls away again. I agree totally with what Reed said. It's a dangerous game for LSU, but I don't see it being. I don't see them pulling a Troy. Though this is an interesting thing. LSU has won 12 straight home games. That's a pretty long streak in Tiger Stadium. They've won 17 straight non-conference games. Their last loss was to Troy.
Okay,
17 straight non-conference home games.
Yes. And LSU overall is 66-1 in their last 67 non-conference home games. They've only lost twice since 2000. Both of those were to teams from Alabama. They lost to UAB in 2000, Nick Saban's first team. And they lost to Troy, and now they play in South Alabama. That has nothing to do with the game, but I just find it interesting that they're playing another Alabama team in this spot.
And it's not the teams you would think would come in and beat them, right? It's been surprises, and so you got to look alive. By the way, if the prediction turns out to be a good one, is that going to be the every week strategy here for predictions?
Perhaps if
crowdsourcing.
If it's 48-24, 48-24, or 47-23, yeah, I might go back to the well.
Well, I'm just waiting for them to have predictions that average out to something really funky, like I don't even know, 32-29 or something.
You know how many? I've been covering LSU since 1992. You know how many times I've gotten the score exactly right? Exactly right.
I'm going to go with once.
Once.
It's hard to do. It really is hard to do.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm going to kind of go in between the two of y'all's predictions. I have LSU winning 42-21. I think, one thing is if you could force South Alabama into some red zone failures, that would really help, whether it be turnovers, forcing them into field goals, that sort of thing. You can separate from this team by doing that. But I do think LSU needs to get out to a lead in the first half, and that's a big deal this week.
Were you kind of surprised how large that spread is, 22 points? You kind of surprised by that or no? Because UCLA covered it last week.
Yeah, and I mean, LSU is one of the only teams in the country that are winless against the spread. They're 0-4 against the spread this year.
Right.
So that spread is probably depressed from where it was earlier in the year. Like if these two teams had played week one, the spread's probably 27.5 points, something like that.
Right.
And so it has come down quite a bit. I think if you bring it down below the 3 touchdown mark, you're going to have the sports books are going to look at that and they're going to lose money on people betting on LSU if LSU happens to have finally break out and finally look like we expected them to look. So I think that's why the number is where it is. All right. So that's our show, and we'll see what happens Saturday night. We do have an exciting announcement for you. I'm going to be out there hosting a postgame show. We'll also have a live postgame show from Tiger Stadium after the game. Probably start 15-20 minutes after the final whistle. So tune in for that on these same channels. Subscribe to the LSU Sports on NOLA.com YouTube channel and follow us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. So for our producer, Amelia Cotton, he's Reed Darcey and Scott Rabalais. I'm Zach Ewing, and thanks for watching.